Welcome to another episode of Block by Block. It's already episode 10, so it's a little bit of a celebration episode. So I thought, let's have Darren over. We've been in contact for a few years already in this space. And since I've known Darren, he has been working on IPOR, and IPOR has been going through a few changes, which I think is super interesting right now, especially now we're seeing more institutional adoption. So thank you, Darren, for coming on. Maybe just a little intro. Who are you? What are you doing at IPOR?
Okay, cool. Well, Dennis, thanks for having me. It's taking some getting used to seeing your name on the screen fully doxed. So, we've known each other for quite a while now. So IPOR and Fusion is the new product that's really getting a lot of traction. Actually, we always started with kind of this as an institutional tool. We started as an interest rate derivative protocol, both benchmark and interest rate swap. And now we've moved into Fusion, which is institutional grade vaults. So we've always had the idea that more of these large scale sophisticated actors would be coming and allocating on chain. Now it's actually happening. So co-founder of IPOR Labs, now building quite a long time in the crypto space. 15 years full-time, 6 in DeFi, and my co-founder is Dimitar Dinev. He's been working in the space since 2017 full-time, and we've been building a lot of stuff over the time. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how your thesis hasn't changed. Like there will be sophisticated players coming to this market. They have certain wishes. Back then, that was interest rate swaps, good data of where interest rates are moving, how they're moving. What changed that made you go into IPOR Fusion? What was the click basically that said to you like, hey, we should build like a different product or repackage the product differently?
I mean, everything kind of flows into the same thesis. So interest rates, the structured products, all of the automated products are fixed income markets in general, right? So if we looked at like original thesis, we were looking at between DEX and credit markets, we were looking at the credit market side and the fixed income thesis. And that was how we started with both the index and the interest rate swaps. And actually, these products that we're building are everything is related to rates. Everything is related to rates. So, you got the Fed funding rate, you have the interbank rates, you have the interprotocol overblock rate, which is the IPOR index. And all of these have different interplays. It's kind of interesting how, the DeFi native rates or the IPOR rates tend to trade inversely to the TradFi rates. And there's a couple of structural reasons for that. But yeah, I mean, when we started with a benchmark rate. A benchmark rate is great if you have an efficient market, right? So if you have a lot of players that are taking a lot of big brain moves or arbitrage moves or a kind of an efficient market thesis, everything converges to the mean, and the mean is the benchmark. And the benchmark rate then becomes useful for hedging because you can create fixed rate products. And that thesis, I still believe to be the right one, but it was probably about 5 years too early. And it was implicit on an efficient market, and an efficient market we did not have, efficient market we still don't have, but we're taking steps. So if you think of Fusion and its role in all of this, vaults is really, I think it's a really overused term these days. Everyone's talking about vaults. Everyone wants to build them. A lot of people are late coming, but don't really understand how a vault works or why, and how it falls into this thesis. And for me, vaults are on-chain strategy containers, which can be like fully fledged, sophisticated strategies, for example, that are using interest rate swaps in the background to create, a fixed payoff. So if we look at this in simple terms, we might think of like, what was the main trade of like 2023, 2022, 2023, 2024, like kind of spanning that. It's the Ethereum staking leverage looping, right? So you borrow ETH, you get more staked ETH, and you get the levered basis between the cost of borrow and your ETH staking rate, right? Okay, so that's nice. But what happens if we look at something very recent, what happens if you have an issue with Aave, potential bad debt? You have people that are withdrawing. That leaves an elevated borrowing rate. So you actually get an inversion. So you're not just getting that inversion on you're actually getting that kind of rate inversion, on leverage. So if you're paying an 8% borrow rate and you're returning 2.5%, right? That means that you're getting 5.5 times 10, right? So minus 55%, rather than yielding like a 4 to 5% annualized. So, this is exactly the type of strategy. And, I don't know if I want to call it like a black swan event, but like definitely an outlier event that says, okay, we need these hedging products, right? So we're running some back tests. We have an AMM for the V3 interest rate swap, and we're running some back tests, and really the swap payoff is much cleaner. It's like much smoother if you're running this kind of active hedging strategy than if you're running naked, right? So I see vaults, like the vaults that are built on Fusion are more like the sophisticated strategies, fully automated, kind of to create this nice risk-adjusted return payoff. And it all fits into this fixed income thesis. It is actually this kind of great vehicle for interest rate swaps to go packaged into these levered strategies. And it all fits together. So on one side, I would say that Fusion is kind of the market efficiency engine. And then the interest rate swap protocol still lives and runs in the background. We'll have a V3 coming out, which is hedging volatility and uncertainty, and they go hand in hand.
Nice. So it's, I think the benefit of what Fusion does is it allows all these different strategies and then the user to pick the strategies that they trust in or they think is a good strategy at this moment, but also for strategists to build those strategies. Like, how does that interplay? Because you mentioned you're doing some research yourself, so you're doing some vault development yourself, but Fusion is also a bit of an open ecosystem, so people can work with you to build their strategies, and you provide basically the infra, they provide the alpha or the strategy, and then users benefit from both, like solid infra and well-tested strategies. How do you work with strategists?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe this starts with kind of DNA, right? IPOR Labs, we are protocol builders and technology builders at our core, right? We don't want to be in the asset management business. We don't want to build these strategies. We want to build the infrastructure for a neutral playing ground. And Fusion plays this part. It's like the engine of the car, but, the people are looking around the shop. They're seeing they're choosing their paint color. They're choosing, like the interior. They're choosing the engine. They want it to go fast. They want it to, get to and from the football match, on weekends, or, you want to get in the Lambo and run fast. You have a higher risk tolerance. Fusion is kind of this engine inside the car. It's all the parts that you can construct. But in the end, people are choosing kind of different risk-adjusted returns. They're like choosing their vehicle that they want to buy and that they want to get into.
Yeah. And still, it's good to showcase, if you are an infra developer, what you can do. So like the builders who come in, the strategists who come in, they want to know, what can I do? Which is probably a lot, because you have developed all this infra, the elements in that infra, all functions, connectors. So in a way, there's always some part that needs to show, like, hey, this is what you can do with that infra. And then you need to build some kind of product basically on your own infra. But you hope that these builders come in and see that it's really good and then want to build on itself. So doesn't that create competition, or is it like really the collaboration that you work with these strategists that you say, like, hey, you have this good strategy and we help you make that translation to how it looks in the infra and how it looks technically?
Yeah. So maybe to answer that question, I'll just roll back to that kind of DNA, topic that I started with, which was, like we're protocol builders at heart, right? If you look at a lot of the vault infrastructure that's being used out there, it actually was built by a pretty discretionary asset manager for their own use. So they're thinking, how can my internal systems plug into this? And then they're trying to shop it around to other people to build. And it's problematic in a couple of ways. One, kind of everyone has their own system and way of managing risk. Everyone has certain trust assumptions. Everyone has certain ways of doing things, right? So, if we go back to, like, let's say like the 2017, 2018 era, where you had like all these enterprise blockchains, right? There was a trade and logistics blockchain built by Maersk. right? And no one signed up for it because they didn't want to basically give their main competitor all of their data. So you have a couple of different things. You have one, you have maybe the pieces don't fit well together. Two, you have the conflict of interest. And, a lot of people spent a good amount of time in this kind of last cycle, I would say, if we term the last cycle like kind of 2025, doing a lot of bespoke behind the scenes liquidity deals, trying to attract allocators. We went through what I would say we did life on hard or expert mode. We did heads down. We said no to all of these, and we built out infrastructure. And infrastructure is what I believe that's going to help us to scale. So like a vault is not new technology, right? A vault, like Fusion vaults are 4626 vault standards at their core. And that means that you have you have the share price, you have the single deposit asset and the accounting done in that asset, and you have a standard interface, right? Everything around that, plus the tooling, plus how you get to market, that's what makes a difference. So, if you're a vault protocol and you just do a 4626 vault, why should anyone use you except for just using just building their own 4626, saying, trust me, bro, moving it from the vault to an EOA and doing whatever they want, and then pricing the share price. And, if they do that, then we know how that can tend to end up. What we built a legit suite for asset managers, an entire tool set around that. So if I kind of break it down into I'll try to be short and to the point. Fuses are connectors that get you to market fast. They're also your on-chain transparent guardrails, and they're also what allows for kind of trust minimized or trustless asset management. So how that works is a fuse is a smart contract connector. It's not upgradable. It can be used to connect anything. So for example, let's say, Dennis, you build a fuse for Aave V4 because it just launched. As soon as you build it and put it into the Fusion ecosystem, everyone can use it. So that means build once, everyone can use. So that means that you don't have to have a replicated Solidity developer cost across all organizations. That's one benefit. The second benefit is it's really easy to actually get to market. So you build it, you deploy it, I can add it to my vault. We can share that same fuse, but we don't share any risk because that fuse does no accounting, it holds no assets. It's just a money pipe. So that connects your vault, my vault, whatever vaults, to Aave V4. So it's a way to get to market. The other thing is each action fuse has a balance fuse, which means that the vault can account for its own state. So again, if you would deposit USDC into Aave, you get AUSDC. Right? That has an interest-bearing element, and you can query the smart contract and say, okay, how many USDC can I get out for this share? I don't understand why I would need someone to price this on a spreadsheet or an abacus or whatever off-chain and then feed it to on-chain because it's actually being priced on-chain. So the vault can actually query the smart contract itself. So that allows for trustless accounting. So fuses are your go-to-market. They're your security because if a fuse is connected, assets can go there. If a fuse is not connected, assets can't go there, right, by default. And they allow also external parties to verify what's happening. So, Dennis, again, you connect your vault to Aave V4, I can see that, right? If you don't have that fuse installed, I know that that's not a valid authorized access point. That's important for, let's say, DeFi power users who want to validate this, but it's also important on the regulatory side because we have some partners that have their MiCA license and they need to prove for their license and to the regulators and to the clients what are authorized venues. So the same process of kind of, I guess, whitelisting assets and also kind of creating your on-chain investment universe in vaults is valid in the asset management space and it's necessary. So that's one. So the Fuse system and the way it works is designed built by IPOR Labs specifically for Fusion. We have an entire tool set around that. So we're taking all the steps actually to be agentic first. And what I mean by that is not that you put your money and give it to a bot and it runs around the internet. It's more that, we built the stack now with AI being so powerful to be able to set up, validate and manage a vault, but within the rules that it's protected, right? So for example, you can build a strategy, you can set it up, you can connect the fuses, choose the authorized assets and the substrates. And then let's say that you want to hand me the keys to the vault, right? To actually manage it on behalf of your depositors. So this is possible because of the rules, right? If you give me this alpha role, the alpha can act on behalf of the assets in the vault, but the vault is owner of the funds. So you have this nice provenance. You have depositor owns the assets by way of shares. The vault owns the assets by the way of the fuses in the end markets, and this alpha role can only, so you have this nice kind of way to change the management of the vault itself. And that reflects a lot of these functions inside of traditional asset management, inside of a fund. And then again, everything being transparent and on-chain, that means that it's possible to validate by third parties, anyone reading the smart contracts, by an agent that's scanning, says who can do what provably. So we built this because we like to build protocols, and because my personal kind of ethos goes into it, which is don't trust, verify, which is a very OG crypto ethos, but it goes very well into asset management, where, if I build a strategy and you put your assets into it, I don't want you to have to trust me. You should be able to independently know exactly the bounds of that strategy. So I talked a long time. Maybe I'll pause here.
Yeah, but you touched basically on a core point that I see not only crypto companies making a distinction on, but also AI companies, basically that compliance, because enterprises, they want to ensure that they're, complying with the law, that the parties that they're interacting with also are complying. And there's a few points that are super important, like a don't trust but verify was always a crypto thesis, like, hey, this is public on chain, but it's actually super handy for these enterprises because now they just have to read out the chain, get the data from there, and can see what's actually happening. And the other thing then is like, that's like after the fact, like that's a lot what we focus on indexing goes like, hey, what happens on chain? We pull that, here's the data. But there is a part that if you want to do an action on chain, you need to have that access control basically. And that's what you do with the fusions, the fuses in Fusion. But I think, for example, in AI, that is also like a major discussion right now. Like, hey, your agent, if you give it all these tools, it will try to do everything. But if we limit the tools, it can only go as wrong as what it has access to. So
Yes.
I feel that that's a good point. You also mentioned AI in that, but I feel like both are like that openness and that access control is what makes a lot of things compliant, and that's the need of these enterprises. So is that like now different than before in crypto? Because what I feel like, and we've been around for a few bear markets, is crypto, like the tech right now isn't super different from in the last few years. We have built better standards, like those plasma vaults use 4626, those help with being compliant and having standards that everybody use, help with adoption. But what changed that now enterprises and banks want to come in versus, let's say 4 years back?
I mean, it's always been an inevitability. I think, in general, traditional industries don't want to give up their head start position. They want to create, like a anti-competitive environment, but blockchain is just better rails, right? Tokenized assets, like, for example, it's more like back office reconciliation of transactions, accounting, asset issuance. That really is a huge cost structure inside of banking and finance, right? And on chain, it replaces a lot of those functions, right? You still have to deal with let's say the issuer risk, the liquidity risk, but it kind of changes that infrastructure, right? For example, like financial auditing and on-chain transactions are a different thing, right? It actually makes the job much easier.
What I'm actually hearing here is the institutions and the banks are seeing that there are too many middlemen in their operation, which is sometimes actually are themselves. But I think they'll still have to figure out like, who do we want to cut out here? And everybody's like trying to defend their business. So there's a bit of like a FOMO, like, hey, I don't want to lose my business, so it needs to change, and I need to change my business and get on chain. Is that the driver? Like just simply FOMO, like we always have in crypto? Or
I don't
is there
know.
more to it?
There's definitely more to it. But, so it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I was in New York. I spoke on the New York Stock Exchange, inside the New York Stock Exchange building at Vault Summit about vaults. And it was a very weird experience. I have to say, I never anticipated, kind of doing this. I wore a pink suit. I couldn't show up to Wall Street with the, kind of navy blue or black. Had to do with something a little different. But and then I flew to Berlin to a private allocators event, and on the plane I watched The Big Short. It's fabulous financial movie for anyone, right? And like it has all the easy to grasp kind of applications. It's a great film. But like going back to like the how you're creating the structured products and the CLOs and the CDOs, that's creating an asset. It's doing origination. It's doing due diligence. It's understanding what the makeup of that asset is. And of course, we're recreating that in a lot of the DeFi infrastructure right now. You have tranching, you have assets that make up, like their entire balance sheet is made up of other assets, but you can do it transparently, right? So this is the thing, I've seen, for example, these guys Herd, it's an AI startup, and they do an entire breakdown of an asset. Like you start with an asset, you see the entire balance sheet of that specific asset. And so you can see what are the dependencies, what are the risks. And so if you take that and apply it to The Big Short and the structured products and the tranching and, what exactly makes up the underlying, you can potentially see more transparently. You can potentially risk manage better. Obviously, there's the potential not. You can also try to hide these things, but you have all of the possibilities to make for a better, more transparent financial system. And also, one of the things from the Vault Summit was I was at a round table. One of the points brought up was liquidations in DeFi are too efficient, and that's a problem because you can have a kind of these cascading liquidation events that lead to these really wicked wicks, but it also keeps the system, the system can flush out leverage pretty efficiently. So, there's all of these kind of different things, and it's all about changing the piping and changing the transparency.
Yeah, and some traders, maybe traditional traders, won't like that because it might take normally days, and then they can, because of the inefficiency, capture that and part of the profit, or be a service provider because you're taking on some risk somewhere and get paid for that. And now it's like automated fully and happening maybe in a few seconds. But there are luckily other DeFi products that capture that risk too of those liquidations. So it's just like a different product, but they then lose their original strategy and somebody else is picking that up. So I think, yeah, it's a shift. So being there on Wall Street, were there a lot of like traditional funds, or was it like a bunch of crypto bros just rented a venue there and all came together? Or was it a good mix of like TradFi and the new crypto world?
I thought it was a good mix. It was a good mix. I would say that you had a lot of people from pioneering, like from traditional financial institutions that are taking on a pioneering role. You had some people that were exploring. You had a lot of the digital asset infrastructure kind of leaders there. So I would say that it was a very good mix. And actually it was so full that they weren't letting a lot of the ticket holders in. So they had a problem with attendance, and that attendance being too well attended. So I know that some people they were doing like BD outside, they would go to a coffee shop or go get lunch all together because they couldn't make it into the the NYSE venue.
Yeah. Which is funny because normally at crypto events everybody just signs up for everything, and then you have to like oversell tickets by a multiple, and then the venue might be full.
Yeah.
So it's a good sign. People plan to go and show up. So what's the strategy for IPOR themselves attracting these? So there's a lot of like what we talked about is, hey, just build good infrastructure, have a good philosophy in your product, but that is never the only thing that makes people end up. Like there's always some BD lift, there's always some networking, there's always being smart about who you partner up with and whose vaults you're launching, for example. Like what's the strategy on that part, getting towards like bigger players building a vault themselves or depositing into these vaults from these strategists?
Yeah, again, going back to we really got onto the curator economy where, IPOR Labs, we build the core tech and we go out and partner with people that are going to put their IP, their risk infrastructure, or their, customer funnel to work. Right. So that has started to pay off quite nicely. We were able to actually announce what I consider are the two largest institutional vault announcements in the history of vaults. And that is with our partnership with Tesseract. Both BitGo clients inside of the custody environment can access Fusion vaults, but by way of Tesseract. So Tesseract is a MiCA licensed CASP, crypto asset service provider. They are servicing the BitGo clients, and Fusion, again, is this engine underneath, right? Even if you go on the Tesseract Vault page, you see in kind of the, the FAQs that it's built on, the Fusion infrastructure. So it's just a subnote, it's like a small subtext. And, that's why I'm more than happy that's how it is, because I think that's how it should be. Fusion is this powerful financial engine underneath the stack, doing all of the execution, accounting, standardization. And so for that, we took the BD works a lot on service. Service means, when you're building something, you're always trying to find your first users, your use case, your clients, and, feedback. Right. So you want user feedback and then you figure out what to build next. With the interest rate swaps, we didn't really have that because you didn't have a lot of sophisticators trading. So we were a bit more in the dark about what to build. Focusing on the curators, someone comes and they say, hey, I have assets. I want to run this strategy. I want to run it on this protocol or across these protocols. That's a very nice client funnel because I have people coming to me that tell me exactly what they want us to build and we build it. Right. So it takes away a lot of the guesswork. It takes away a lot of the kind of wasted labor. And that's been really efficient for us. And that means like Fusion probably covers about 90% of DeFi out of the box. Anything else, helps us, we can build it quick. And as I mentioned, the Fuse system works, build once everyone can use. So right now, we're completing some fuses for Euler swap LP. Right. So, Euler as a money market, it also has like a DEX inside of it. And so that's going to be one that's going to be accessible to everyone because, someone said, hey, I want to use this. So that's that. We also do some feedback sessions and lessons, getting about, kind of what is, what experiences have people had building on Fusion. So for example, we have a couple people that just build really hands-free. They have all of their own automation, deployment. They need help, on the marketing for the launch, and they need help on making sure that everything was working on the front end, but they're all hands-off. We have other people that actually, ask IPOR Labs to help build the automation, as long as it's algorithmic, as long as it's deterministic, we can help with that. And we have people that are deploying from the stack, even in let's say, like DAO to business kind of permissioned. There's a legal agreement that goes between the DAO and the organization. And there's the revenue mechanism is built into the smart contracts themselves. But, it takes kind of all kinds of ways. But the really thing that we focused on was not building for someone who's not going to be using, like take a lot of the guesswork out. And by having this direct client feedback, we also get to ask their wish list. Asking their wish list helps us build out a better product suite. And then we can also build things that will make it more useful for everyone in the meantime. So we have an entire agentic suite around. We built MCP, which is currently read only, but you can also point an agent at the V3 Python SDK to build and validate vaults or to even fully automate. And the reason that we did that was like, why we focused on Python, not Solidity, is that, all the guys inside of asset management, they can code in Python. That's the language of finance. No one uses Solidity. So Fusion becomes their Solidity plug and play stack while they can use their risk management tools. They can use their own, kind of allocation parameters. Then can run it through the Python SDK to do on-chain management. So again, we focused on building a robust tool set around the vault infrastructure, also understanding how traditional asset managers are eventually going to move on chain and what they need.
Yeah, and I think like such a collaborative approach will really help not only create like goodwill from their side because you remove all these blockers, you really partner with them. But on the other end, you also start to see like, hey, where is my product still short on features? Like if they keep asking for a feature or like, hey, is this possible? And you're like, no, not yet. You can always add it to the roadmap and give it to them and basically keep feeding with the tools that they need to build their strategies. So I think an important part, like whether it's in sales is like, or just BD is like removing some of the blockers people have because there often is the will to engage. The question is like, do they have time? Do they have an understanding of what you're actually like trying to give to them in infra? And it also helps abstracting the infra away. If they can talk into their language like Python and they just understand the infra, how it works and like what building blocks we have, then it becomes less friction, but also abstracts the infra away so you can be that footnote on like somebody's balance sheet. So it's like both in tech you can abstract away, but also in for the end user. And I think that's where we also see crypto going more. We always said it, I think, in crypto, like, yeah, the normal people won't see a blockchain transaction in their app. But now I think with this institutional demand, we're actually abstracting that away. So
yeah.
That's cool to see.
The entire fund management industry is, you subscribe to something, someone does something, and you get a monthly, quarterly, or annual report that you have to have kind of full trust, and everyone in the value system is checking one another, right? And it's not mistrust per se, but it's all checking, right? And in Fusion, you get that, but you get it fully on chain, and you get the transparency by default. So I think it's just absolutely much better experience.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And I think that's also like a good note to end on, is better user experience, but also just like listening to your clients' wishes will keep you alive, because I think that's what also helps just in crypto. Just stay alive until your thesis is right. Like a few years back, the interest rate swaps weren't the right product, but maybe you'll stay alive to eventually cycle them in again in these faults. And when that adoption is ready, but staying alive and keep building with your partners and listening to what the market actually needs will just help you stay around for longer. Anything that we missed that's like maybe exciting on the roadmap for Fusion in the coming weeks or months that we have to look out for?
I guess more integrations, more strategies, more big news. We've covered so much as a product suite. Actually, one of the problems that I have is that I can't keep track of all of the features that we ship. So if I can't keep track of this, then the market, it definitely is not. So, I'm telling my guys sometimes, there's too many goodies. We need to be better at communicating them, because then, the market misses them. There's so many new features that are being shipped that, yeah. So really a lot of this kind of onboarding and education is going well. And that's just more curators, more asset managers to come through the pipeline. So that's really kind of what I'm looking forward to.
Nice. Yeah. Just keep shipping, and everybody that comes in already has the tools they need. No? Well, then the invitation is there to just like visit IPOR and see what's already there. Maybe look at the change log, how big it is, and just wonder like, hey, what else do we see next week pop up here? Darren, how can people find you? Like if they want to send you a message or follow you on socials?
Yeah, so the website is, I would just go to the app, app.ipor.io/fusion. There's actually a really nice campaign going on right now, which is, I think it's going to be On-Chain Summer by Base. We called it Base Season. We may need to reterm that. There's a lot of cool strategies that are happening right now. On X, you can follow us, IPOR_IO. Or you can follow me, Darren Camas, extremely anonymous, DARRENCAMAS. Yeah, I mean, on the website, fusion.ipor.io, you can find all of the links, all of the ways to build on the infrastructure, the docs. The docs are kind of an infinite resource. We have a deep wiki where you can play around, chat with an agent to ask any questions about the infrastructure. So there's a lot of stuff to explore. So if you're curious and you want to build, there's endless things. If you are big brain, but you want to work smarter, not harder, just go to the app and find a strategy that works for you.
Nice. Yeah. So something for everybody. Cool. Yeah. Thank you for coming on, Darren. It was good to hear you about the institutional adoption. I'll drop all of those links in the description of the episode. And then thank you all for listening. See you at another Block by Block.